I received a call from a colleague in the middle of the night. His father was in emergency surgery, suffering from severe anemia. I happened to have a matching blood type, so I went straight to donate 400 milliliters. His family didn't offer a single word of thanks. They didn't even bother to cook me a bowl of noodles. Half a year later, the phone rang again. The amount of blood last time wasn't enough. This time, we have to trouble you again. I held the receiver and quoted my price, word by word. 400 milliliters of blood. Compensation. Labor fee. Emotional distress. Total. 200.000 N. Transfer the money first. Once I receive it, I'll go. On the other end of the line, Li Hao's voice sounded like someone had crushed his throat. The signal went dead silent for 3 full seconds. Then came an eruption, like a volcano exploding, raw with fury. Chu Nian, are you fucking insane? Are you blackmailing us? My father is lying in the hospital right now and you're asking for money? I pulled the phone away from my ear, avoiding the piercing noise, my gaze drifting to the pitch-black night outside the window. Tonight's sky looked exactly like it had half a year ago, thick, heavy, so dark it felt impossible to dissolve. Calmly, I replied. That's my price. Transfer the money and I'll go. Otherwise, find someone else. Do you have no conscience at all? That's a human life. How can you just stand by and watch someone die? Li Hao roared into the phone, every word like a sharp moral nail, trying to pin me to a pillar of shame. Conscience. That word dragged me straight back to half a year ago. At 2 in the morning, in the city hospital's blood donation station, the needle was pulled from the vein in my arm. 400 milliliters of bright red blood flowed into the collection bag. The nurse told me to press the cotton ball tightly and rest for a while. I was dizzy, my face pale as paper, sitting alone on the icy bench in the hospital corridor. Not far away, Li Hao and his mother, True to Mai, surrounded the doctor who had just come out of the emergency room, showering him with gratitude. Thank you, doctor. You're truly our family's lifesaver. You've worked so hard, please have some water. From beginning to end, not a single one of them looked in my direction. I was no different from an extra chair in the hallway, used when needed, then abandoned without a second thought. The blood leaving my body took my warmth with it, but it wasn't as cold as human hearts. I sat there until the dizziness eased, then leaned against the wall and walked out of the hospital step by step. The cold night wind slipped through my thin clothes. I pulled my coat tighter and stood by the roadside to call a car. As the car passed by Li Hao's house, I could still smell the rich aroma of chicken soup drifting from their kitchen. It must have been cooked for True to Mai, the mother who had stayed up all night worrying about her son, now nourishing her body. And me, the person who had just donated 400 milliliters of blood to save a life. I didn't even get a sip of hot water. The bitterness stabbed into my heart like needles, awakening the humiliation and pain I had suppressed for so long. I let out a cold laugh into the receiver and repeated myself. 200.000 N. Transfer the money and I'll come. Then I hung up decisively. Without hesitation, I opened my contacts and blocked Li Hao's number. Then I blocked him on WeChat as well. Once everything was done, my world suddenly fell into silence. My phone screen lit up again almost immediately, a call from an unfamiliar number. I didn't answer, letting it ring endlessly. Then messages flooded in. Chu Nian, you fucking bitch, you'll get what's coming to you. If anything happens to my father, I'll never let you go, even if I die. Please, Chu Nian, I'm begging you, just treat it as a loan. Okay? Save him first. You heartless monster, you won't end well. From groveling pleas to vicious curses, just a handful of messages laid bare Li Hao's selfishness and shamelessness. I felt nothing. I calmly took screenshots of every message, organized them neatly into a new folder, and named it evidence. Then I turned on airplane mode. The buzzing, noisy world finally went completely quiet. I knew this was only the beginning. They had grown used to my kindness. Used to my soft heart. When kindness gained a price, what they felt wasn't shame, it was betrayal. Fine then. If they wouldn't reason with me, I would talk numbers. The next morning, the moment I stepped into the office, I felt an invisible pressure spreading through the air. Colleagues gathered in small groups, whispering. Their gazes toward me were full of scrutiny, mixed with a contempt that was hard to put into words. I immediately understood, Li Hao had started a public opinion war. Sure enough, as soon as I sat down, the desk phone rang. The switchboard transferred the call. I barely lifted the receiver before True To Mai's shrill voice exploded in my ear. Sharp enough to tear through my eardrums. You heartless little animal, how dare you still show up at work? Her voice was so high-pitched, carrying the sound of wind blowing into the phone from her rage, that I instinctively frowned and pulled the receiver away. At once, the colleague at the next desk straightened up, pretending to organize documents, while sneaking glances at me without blinking. Our Li Hao is honest and kind. He treated you like his closest friend, and you stabbed him in the back when disaster struck. Do you have any conscience at all? True To Mai began to sob, her voice thick with nasal congestion, as if she were suffering unimaginable injustice. My husband is still lying in the hospital. The doctor says he could die at any moment. And you demand 200,000 before you'll help. Can you sleep at night? Is your blood made of gold? Every word was like a dull blade sawing at my nerves. Especially that line, is your blood made of gold? Exactly the same accusation Li Hao had thrown at me the night before. No, my blood isn't made of gold. But it is part of my body. It is what keeps me alive. Why should you assume I owe it to you for free? That I must give endlessly, unconditionally, as if it were my duty? I leaned away from the probing stares around me and quietly pressed the record button on my phone. Auntie, if you have something to say it properly. Insults won't solve anything. My voice was calm, as if I were discussing the weather. That calmness only pushed her further into madness. Solve what? 200,000? Why don't you just go rob a bank? Are you trying to drive our whole family to death? Back then, letting you donate blood was dishonoring you. Letting you accumulate virtue. You really don't know your place. That sentence detonated the anger I'd held in all night. Honoring me. So in their eyes, my sacrifice was nothing more than a favor bestowed. I cut her off coldly. I donated blood because I wanted to. It was not my obligation. You didn't even bother to say thank you back then. And now you have the nerve to demand more from me? On the other end, True To Mai clearly froze for a second, then erupted into hysterical screaming. I don't care. Today you must come to the hospital. If you don't, I'll go to your company and cause a scene so everyone knows your true face, abandoning a human life for money. You cold-blooded, inhuman thing. Just wait, I'm coming right now. I'll make sure you have nowhere left to stand. Her voice shrieked like she had gone mad. Sharper and sharper, piercing my eardrums like needles. I tightened my grip on the receiver and answered slowly, word by word. Perfect. Let everyone see who's truly cold-blooded, the people who didn't ask how I was for half a year. And only remembered me when they needed blood. And everything you just said, including your insults and threats, has been fully recorded. If necessary, I'll hand this recording over to my lawyer. The line went silent instantly, leaving only True To Mai's heavy, furious breathing. I didn't give her a chance to say another word and hung up decisively. I renamed the audio file True To Mai's threats and uploaded it to cloud storage. I knew the real storm was still ahead. They wouldn't let this go easily. And I was ready to see it through to the end. The office was unnaturally quiet. Everyone pretended to be busy with their work, but countless invisible threads of attention shot toward me from every direction, weaving a dense net that made it hard to breathe. Li Hao was wearing a faded gray t-shirt that day, his hair messy, his eyes bloodshot, dark circles under them heavy as ink. He wasn't sitting at his desk but standing in the break room, taking turns pouring out his misery to different colleagues. I stood up to get some water. As I passed by, I heard his carefully restrained, choked voice. My dad is still in the ICU. The doctor says it's really bad. I honestly don't know what else to do. I treated Chu Nian as my closest friend. Last time she helped without hesitation. I thought this time would be the same. He paused at just the right moment, then let out a heavy sigh, his voice filled with helplessness and disappointment. Who knew this time she'd open her mouth and demand 200,000 N? She said, not a cent less. To her, my father's life is only worth that much. A male colleague close to him patted his shoulder angrily. That's truly immoral, taking advantage of someone else's misfortune. A female colleague echoed him. Exactly, Chu Nian always looked so gentle. Who would have thought her heart was this vicious? This is a human life we're talking about. Li Hao lifted his reddened eyes and looked at them with gratitude. Then turned and shot me a glance filled with resentment and grievance. He had succeeded in shaping himself into the image of a devoted son, betrayed by a friend. Helpless in the face of catastrophe. And I had become the villain, the opportunist who fished in muddy waters. Cold-blooded, heartless, devoid of humanity. I held my cup of water and walked back to my seat. Acutely aware of the weight of countless contemptuous, judgmental stares glued to my back. A female colleague who had always been friendly toward me passed by, hugging a stack of documents. She let out a sharp snort, not loud, but loud enough to echo through the unnaturally quiet office. Then, as if she suddenly lost her balance, she deliberately dropped half the files onto my desk, knocking over my cup in the process. Warm water spilled everywhere, soaking my keyboard and my desk mat. Oh, sorry, she said, without the slightest hint of remorse. She bent down leisurely to pick up the papers, never once glancing at me from beginning to end. I silently grabbed some tissues and wiped up the water. I said nothing. I knew it then, I had been completely isolated. At that moment, the internal phone on Section Chief Fong's desk rang. He called me into his office. I walked straight in. Section Chief Fong gestured for me to sit, his face wearing an expression of earnest sympathy. Xiao Chu, I've heard about Li Hao's family situation, he said, folding his hands on the desk and leaning forward slightly, adopting the posture of a mediator. We're colleagues. When someone runs into such a major hardship, lending a helping hand is the right thing to do. This isn't just about helping Li Hao, it's about maintaining unity within our department. I tried to explain. Section Chief Fong, it's not like what they're saying. I already donated blood once half a year ago. He immediately raised a hand to cut me off, impatience flashing across his face. Or rather, it wasn't impatience, it was indifference. He didn't care about the truth at all. Regardless, this involves a human life, he said. You asking for money like that, if word gets out, it will seriously damage the company's image. People will think our company is cold and lacking compassion. Every sentence was like a soft knife, stabbing straight into a vital spot. What he cared about wasn't the truth, nor my grievance, it was the so-called corporate image and internal harmony. Xiao Chu, he said slowly, I hope you'll consider the bigger picture and handle this properly. Don't let a bit of personal emotion affect your work, or your future. That last sentence was unmistakably a warning. If I didn't handle it nicely, then when year-end evaluations and promotion opportunities came around, I likely wouldn't have a place anymore. This was workplace pressure in its rawest, most ruthless form. I walked out of the office feeling like I was surrounded on all sides by rumors, condemning stares, and pressure from management, layer upon layer, all of it pressing down on me, trying to crush me. I sat down, feeling my strength drain away. Injustice, rage, and helplessness wrapped tightly around me, but I didn't cry. Tears are the cheapest thing in this world. They don't buy sympathy, they only invite more contempt. I turned on my computer, ignoring the blinking work messages. I opened a browser and typed, word by word, into the search bar. RH negative blood. Paid blood donation, legal regulations, related case law. They thought isolating me and crushing me would force me to bow my head. They were wrong. The harder they pressed, the less I would retreat. If no one stood on my side, then I would forge my own armor and my own weapons. That weekend, I wanted nothing more than to lock myself inside, cut off all the chaos outside. But when the tree wants calm, the wind refuses to stop. Just after 2 in the afternoon, the doorbell was slammed so violently it felt like the building itself was shaking. The presses were rapid and brutal, as if someone wanted to smash the button apart. Immediately after came True To Mai's shrill, piercing wails. Chu Nian, open the door, you murderer, get out here right now. I looked through the peephole. Her hair was wild, her face twisted with fury, pounding and kicking my steel door like a madwoman. Several neighbors had already poked their heads out into the hallway to watch the spectacle. I didn't open the door. I didn't want to entangle myself with her for even one more second. My silence only drove her further into frenzy. She began rolling around in the hallway, pounding the floor and wailing hysterically. Everyone come look, this girl here is darker than pitch at heart. My son treated her like his best friend. And what did she do? When my husband was on the brink of death, she demanded 200,000 before she'd donate blood. To watch someone die and not help, heaven won't tolerate it. If anything happens to my husband, I'll never forgive her, even if I die. Her sharp, piercing voice stabbed into every corner of the hallway. Very quickly, more and more neighbors gathered. Whispers slipped through the cracks of the door into my ears, each sentence like ants crawling straight into my brain. Good heavens, she looks so gentle and obedient, who knew her heart was this vicious? Yeah, it's pitiful, they need blood to save a life. 200,000, that's basically killing someone. Each word was an invisible blade, slicing into me again and again. I couldn't endure this public trial. I couldn't endure the naked humiliation anymore. I yanked the door open. I just wanted her to shut up. The moment I appeared, True To Mai's eyes lit up with savage delight, like a starving wolf spotting prey. She sprang up like a coiled spring and lunged at me. She grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging deep into my flesh as she tried to drag me out of the apartment. You're coming with me to the hospital, whether you want to or not. You don't get to decide. Her strength was insane. No matter how I struggled, I couldn't break free. In the chaos, True To Mai swung her arm with all her might and slapped me across the face. Smack. The sound cracked through the hallway like thunder. My left cheek burned, my ears rang, my mind went blank. That slap knocked me dizzy, and knocked me awake. In that instant, all the injustice, rage, and endurance I had bottled up for days condensed into a glacier-cold flame. Surging from my feet to the top of my head, I gathered all my strength and shoved her away. True To Mai staggered, lost her balance, stumbled back several steps, and crashed onto the floor. I retreated into my apartment, slammed the door shut, and locked it, my back pressed against the cold steel as my heart pounded wildly, threatening to burst from my chest. Without hesitation, hands trembling, I dialed 110. The police arrived quickly. The moment True To Mai saw the officers in uniform, she instantly slipped into the role of victim, collapsing onto the floor and crying even harder than before. She pointed at my door, accusing me of refusing to save a dying man and even assaulting an elder like her. Just then, hurried footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Li Hao arrived. As if perfectly timed, he rushed to the police, panting, his face filled with grief and despair. He pointed straight at me and shouted, tearing through the air. "Officer, it's her, Chu Nian. My father is lying there waiting for blood to save his life. And she used the situation to demand 200,000 N before she'd donate. She's extorting us." He pulled his phone from his pocket and thrust it in front of the police. His face twisted with smug satisfaction. "I have a recording. She admitted it herself. Officer, This isn't just about money, this is intentional murder. The mediation room at the police station was suffocatingly quiet. Li Hao excitedly handed his phone to the officer and played the carefully edited recording. 400 milliliters of blood. Compensation. Labor fee. Emotional distress. Total. 200.000. My voice in the recording was clear and cold. When it ended, Li Hao's eyes were bloodshot as he shouted. Officer, you heard it. My father is on the verge of death. And she used that to threaten me. If this isn't attempted murder, what is? True Tu Mai chimed in beside him, wiping her tears and muttering about heartlessness and inhumanity. I watched the mother and son perform their act, expressionless. Only after they finished did I slowly raise my head and look straight at the officer in charge of mediation. My voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear. Officer, first, I'd like to clarify 3 points. My calm stood in stark contrast to their agitation. First, blood donation is a voluntary act by citizens, not a legal obligation. I am not required by law to donate blood to anyone, no matter how critical their condition is. Second, Rh-negative blood, also known as panda blood, is extremely rare. Donating 400 milliliters in one instance causes significant physical loss and carries serious risks. What I requested was compensation for a paid blood donation, including health risk, lost work time, and emotional stress. That is a civil negotiation, not extortion as he claims. Third, and most importantly, I took out my phone and opened a folder labeled evidence. Li Hao only let you hear what he wanted you to hear. Now please listen to what I recorded. I pressed play. True Tu Mai's shrill, vicious curses immediately echoed through the room. You heartless animal, I'll go to your company and cause a scene so the whole world knows what kind of person you are. I'll ruin you completely. When the recording ended, I looked straight into True Tu Mai's face, now pale with shock. Then I rolled up my sleeve, revealing the fresh, bloody scratches left by her fingernails. I pointed to my left cheek, still red and swollen. This is evidence of Mrs. True's violent assault in my apartment hallway. The neighbors can testify. I turned back to the police, my gaze steady, my voice calm. They trespassed into my home, verbally abused me, harassed me, framed me, and physically assaulted me, and now they're turning around and accusing me of attempted murder. Li Hao, I said, my voice steady, if this is really about saving a life, then why didn't you go through an official blood bank? Is it because you didn't want to wait in line? Or because you thought my blood was free? That as long as you called, I'd show up, and you could take as much as you wanted? Each sentence was like an arrow, hitting them exactly where it hurt. Li Hao opened his mouth, trying to argue, but no words came out. Finally, I turned to the police officer and played my trump card. For the false accusations and the violence they inflicted on me, I reserve the right to file a lawsuit. Right now, I will be contacting my lawyer. The atmosphere in the mediation room changed instantly. After listening to everything I said and comparing the two recordings with their completely opposite tones, the officer looked at me with calm rationality. Then he turned to Li Hao and his mother, whose momentum had collapsed, their eyes darting nervously. He already had his judgment. The officer's expression grew serious. He began to sternly reprimand them. Entering someone's home without permission, verbal abuse, defamation, and physical assault are all violations of the law. Li Hao and his mother fell completely silent. They had never imagined that someone they had always considered gentle and easy to bully could strike back so fiercely, let alone understand the law and dare to use it. In the end, because my injuries did not meet the threshold for minor bodily harm, the police could only issue a severe warning and file an official report. They handed me a mediation agreement. I didn't need much time to think. I refused any form of mediation. When I stepped out of the police station, the night wind brushed against my face, stinging the place where I had been slapped. But inside, my mind had never been clearer. Backing down and enduring only teaches people how far they can push you. From today onward, I would not retreat another step. After leaving the station, I didn't go home. I took a taxi straight to a friend's place. Tu, my college roommate and closest friend, was now an outstanding lawyer. I told her everything from beginning to end, including the 200.000 end quote and the tense confrontation at the police station earlier. After hearing it all, she was so angry she paced back and forth in the living room. That mother and son are truly the peak of shamelessness. She snapped. What do they think you are? A walking blood bag? After venting, she quickly regained the composure and professionalism of a lawyer. Chu Nian, you did the right thing. With people like them, the softer you are, the more they'll eat you alive. The 200.000 N you quoted, legally speaking. It was a bit risky, but in essence it can be considered a conditional gift. As long as you didn't receive the money, it doesn't constitute extortion or coercion. As for their harassment and defamation, that's clearly a civil infringement. She poured me a glass of warm water, then continued, her tone turning thoughtful. But I find something very strange about this. Logically, hospitals have their own blood supply channels. No matter how rare the blood type is, they wouldn't wait half a year before coming back to you specifically. They said his father needed emergency treatment, but emergencies require blood immediately. No one waits half a year to call someone back to donate. It doesn't make sense. Tu's words jolted me awake. She was right. All this time, I had been led by the nose by the label of saving a life, never once questioning whether the story itself was real. You mean, they're lying? I asked. Very possible, Tu said, her gaze sharp. We need to find out exactly what illness his father has. That's the key. Suddenly, I remembered a college classmate of mine who now worked as a nurse at the city hospital, the same hospital where Li Hao's father was being treated. She wasn't in the same department, but asking around for basic information wouldn't be difficult. I immediately messaged her on WeChat. I didn't reveal anything personal, just said I was helping a friend inquire about a patient named Li Dukhai and included an approximate admission date. She replied quickly and agreed to help. The next afternoon, while I was enduring strange looks from colleagues in the office, my phone vibrated. It was a message from my friend at the hospital. She sent me a screenshot of a medical record with personal information blurred out, leaving only the diagnosis, along with a short voice message. I put on my headphones and played it. Chu Nian, I checked. This patient, Li Dukhai, is absolutely not an emergency case of acute bleeding. He's a long-term patient in nephrology, end-stage renal failure. He's been undergoing regular dialysis. For patients like this, their ability to produce blood is almost gone. Anemia is a normal condition. They need blood transfusions regularly, with no fixed schedule, just to maintain basic life indicators. His family probably came to you because they knew you have a rare blood type and a soft heart. They wanted to turn you into a long-term, free blood source. Don't fall into that trap. This kind of need is a bottomless pit. Boom. My mind went completely blank. End-stage renal failure, regular dialysis, ongoing blood transfusions. So from beginning to end, it had all been a lie. A carefully constructed lie, designed to trap me. What they called, not enough blood last time, wasn't a real shortage at all. It was because they had already anticipated an endless future demand. They wanted to turn me into a living, free panda blood bank, on call at any time. A fixed asset in their family's so-called life-saving industry. A bone-chilling cold mixed with nausea surged up from my stomach. They weren't asking for help. They were trying to farm my blood. I clenched my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I immediately told Tu about this horrifying discovery. On the other end, she let out a cold laugh. Figures. This isn't moral coercion anymore, this is outright fraud. Chu Nian, don't be afraid. Now both initiative and justice are on our side. They want to play? Then we'll play it to the end. I hung up and looked at my computer screen. where a hypocritical apology message from Li Hao was displayed. My eyes were ice cold. Any remaining pity in my heart disappeared completely. In my mind, a complete counterattack plan had already taken shape, step by step, pushing them toward the full price they would have to pay. The next day, I went to work as usual. The moment I stepped into the office, I became the center of attention. The news that Li Hao and his mother had gone to my home to cause trouble, and even ended up at the police station, had spread through the company like wildfire. Li Hao continued playing the role of the pitiful, devoted son, telling everyone how cruel I was, how I had driven his mother to desperation. Most colleagues believed him. They stood on his side, scrutinizing me with guarded, judgmental eyes. I ignored all of it. Calmly, I turned on my computer and logged into the company's internal forum, a place where employees could post anonymously or under their real names. I didn't choose anonymity. Using my real account, I posted a long article titled, "The Full Truth Behind the 200,000N Blood Donation Incident." In the post, I used no melodramatic language. I laid out everything clearly, calmly, and as objectively as possible. From donating blood at midnight half a year ago, to being treated as invisible by the entire family. From the second call asking me to donate again, to the 200,000N price I set as a defensive boundary. From True To Mai's phone insults and threats, to her coming to my home to cause trouble and physically assault me. I attached all the evidence. A photo of me sitting alone in the hospital hallway after my first donation. I had once planned to post it on social media, but deleted it because I looked too weak. The photo still remained in my album. All the messages from Li Hao and True To Mai, from begging to cursing. The full recordings of True To Mai's threatening calls. The police report receipt from after I was assaulted. Photos of the scratches on my arms and the marks on my face. And finally, the strongest evidence of all, a redacted medical record sent from the city hospital, clearly diagnosing end-stage chronic renal failure, uremia stage. At the end of the post, I wrote, "I am willing to help others in times of crisis out of compassion. But my kindness does not mean anyone has the right to exploit or trample on it." What they wanted was not one act of help, but a living, free, long-term blood bag they could summon at any time. The 200,000N was not extortion, it was a protective wall. One I had to build after being deceived and hurt, to save myself from being farmed as a blood source. I ask my colleagues to understand the full truth, and I formally demand that Li Hao and True To Mai immediately cease all harassment and defamation against me. The post exploded like a bomb inside the company. In less than 10 minutes, views surpassed 1,000. The comments section detonated. "Holy shit, plot twist. So his dad has kidney failure and needs long-term transfusions? That family is disgusting. They were trying to turn her into a living blood bank? So asking again after half a year was to trap her permanently, terrifying." I take back what I said before. This isn't watching someone die. This is legitimate self-defense. Team Chu Nian. At first I felt bad for Li Hao. Now I see he's a professional actor. Truly sinister. The female colleague who had dumped files onto my desk earlier looked pale. Her face shifting between white and green. She crept past me and whispered like a mosquito. "Chu Nian, I'm sorry. We didn't know it was like this." I didn't respond. A lightweight apology couldn't erase the wounds I had endured. The atmosphere in the office flipped completely. All eyes shifted from me to Li Hao. He sat hunched in the corner like he was sitting on needles. His face white as paper. His fingers trembled as he typed a few words, trying to argue in the comments, but before he could even hit send, he was drowned in a merciless wave of criticism. Just then, the door to Section Chief Vong's office slammed open. He walked straight toward me, wearing a friendliness I had never seen on his face before. "Xiao Chu," he said warmly, "I've read your post. This incident was the company's oversight. We failed to investigate properly and allowed you to suffer an injustice." His attitude was completely different from last time. "Don't worry," he continued. "The company will never allow any employee to bear false accusations. As for Li Hao's behavior, spreading malicious rumors and severely damaging internal unity, we will deal with it strictly." I looked at him putting on his righteous act and felt nothing but ridicule inside. If I hadn't had solid evidence today, would he still be saying these words? This so-called strict handling was nothing more than an attempt to calm public opinion and protect his own reputation and that of the company. But no matter what, I had won this battle in the workplace, and it was a clean, decisive victory. The reversal of public opinion was only the first step in my counterattack. The very next day, Xiao Xiao, acting as my legal representative, officially sent out 2 lawyers' letters with uncompromising language, one to Li Hao, and one to his mother, Zhao Xu Mei. One letter was delivered directly to Li Hao's company. The other was sent to their home address. In the letters, we clearly stated that their actions constituted serious infringement upon my reputation and personal dignity, and had caused me significant emotional distress. We demanded that within 3 days of receiving the lawyer's letter, they must issue a public written apology, posted on the company bulletin board where Li Hao worked, and on the community notice board where I lived, in order to clarify the truth and eliminate the negative impact. In addition, they were required to compensate me for emotional damages and work-related losses, totaling 10.000 RMB. The letter stated explicitly, if they failed to comply within the deadline, we would immediately file a lawsuit in court. When Li Hao received the lawyer's letter, stamped in red by the law firm, right at the office, he reportedly froze on the spot. Perhaps in his entire life, he had never imagined a day would come when he would be served with a lawyer's letter. That afternoon, he looked like a dog with its tail between its legs, cowardly and miserable, waiting for me after work to block my way and beg for a meeting. The arrogance and resentment once written all over his face were now replaced with sheer panic and fear. Chu Nian, Nian, I was wrong. I was really wrong. He reached out, trying to grab my hand. I stepped back immediately, disgust written plainly across my face. It was all a misunderstanding. My mother didn't know any better. I was confused. Please don't sue, okay? Let's settle this privately. I'll apologize. I'll pay you. I looked at him coldly, so cold that even I found myself unfamiliar. Now you're calling it a misunderstanding? I asked. When you went around the entire company smearing me, why didn't you say it was a misunderstanding? When your mother came to my home and slapped me across the face, why didn't you say it was a misunderstanding? At the police station, when you pointed at me and accused me of deliberately killing someone, why didn't you say it was a misunderstanding? With every question, his face grew paler. I stared straight into his eyes, speaking slowly and clearly, word by word. I refuse any form of private settlement. Either you comply fully with the lawyer's letter, public apology and compensation, or we'll see each other in court. I stepped around him and walked away with my back straight. He stood there frozen in the middle of the road, his face blank and shattered, like someone who had just woken up from a nightmare. As for the company, in order to suppress public backlash and address the negative impact of workplace bullying, management immediately established a special investigation team. With irrefutable evidence laid out, the results came swiftly. The company announced disciplinary action against Li Hao on the grounds that he had deliberately spread false rumors, defamed a colleague, incited internal conflict, seriously violated the employee code of conduct, and caused severe damage to the company's image. The punishment was immediate suspension pending review, cancellation of all eligibility for bonuses, and forfeiture of any year-end bonus. The disciplinary notice was posted in the most prominent location in the office area. Essentially, it was a death sentence for Li Hao's career at the company. No company would want to keep an employee with such poor ethics, someone manipulative and willing to frame others for personal gain. Everything Li Hao had built over the years, his so-called dignity, his proud career, was completely destroyed by his own greed, selfishness, and stupidity in just a matter of days. 1 week later, two unexpected figures appeared at my door. Li Hao and Zhao Shumei. This time, there was no screaming, no crying, no hysterical theatrics. Zhao Shumei carried a small, pitiful basket of fruit. Even the wrapping paper was wrinkled and faded. Her face wore an ingratiating, forced smile, far uglier than her previous crying ever was. She looked nothing like the woman who had cursed me to my face and slapped me in the hallway. Xiao Chu Nian, she said cautiously, lowering her voice. Auntie was wrong before. I was foolish, uneducated, ignorant. Please don't hold it against me. Li Hao stood behind her with his head lowered, shoulders slumped. His voice was hoarse. Chu Nian, my father, he really might not make it this time. The hospital has issued a critical notice. The blood bank is always short, and approvals from above are painfully slow. I'm begging you, just for the sake of our former colleague relationship, please help my family one more time. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, looking coldly at the two of them as they tried to continue their belated tragedy. Not a single trace of sympathy stirred in my heart. If she had known this day would come, she should never have done what she did in the first place. Seeing that I showed not the slightest sign of wavering, True To Mai's expression grew even more panicked. She hurriedly set the basket of fruit on the ground, then dropped to her knees with a heavy thud, clearly trying to kneel before me. Chu Nian, I'm begging you, she cried. I'll kneel for you, please. Open your heart just this once and save our family. I immediately shifted to the side, refusing to accept her kneeling. My voice was icy. I can't accept that. True To Mai, do you remember? I continued calmly. Exactly 1 week ago, right here, you raised your hand and slapped me. How loud it was, how much it hurt, I remember it very clearly. Her body stiffened at once. She couldn't finish kneeling, but she couldn't stand up either, frozen in a painfully awkward position. I looked at the two of them and spoke slowly, deliberately, every word falling clearly into place. What brought you to this dead end today wasn't me. It was your own greed, your coldness, and your ingratitude that pushed you here. If back then you had shown even a shred of respect, one sincere thank you, or even just a bowl of hot noodles, you wouldn't be standing here now. If the blood bank is short, then wait your turn according to the rules. There are plenty of people out there who are worse off than you. Everyone follows the same order. No one gets to cut in line. My blood, sorry, not a single drop is left. Li Hao's face turned deathly pale as he stared at me in despair. True To Mai's crying also caught in her throat, reduced to nothing but broken, choking sobs. I met her regret-filled, hopeless gaze, then calmly and slowly closed the door. Bang! With that sound, every plea and every wail was sealed outside. Outside was their dead end. Inside was my peace. In the end, they still failed to issue the public apology or pay compensation within the deadline stated in the lawyer's letter. Perhaps they couldn't swallow their pride. Or perhaps they truly couldn't scrape together even 10,000 yuan anymore. After receiving my consent, TU immediately filed the lawsuit with the court. A court summons bearing the red seal was quickly delivered to Li Hao's home. I later heard that on the very day the summons arrived, Li Hao's father suffered a sudden deterioration due to a post-surgical infection. His condition worsened rapidly, and the daily medical expenses climbed even higher. That summons became the final straw that broke the camel's back. Li Hao called me one last time. On the phone, his voice was no longer pleading, it was the hysterical madness of someone who had completely collapsed. Chu Nian, do you really have to push things this far? I have nothing left. I lost my job. My future is gone. My father is lying in the hospital waiting to die. And you still aren't satisfied? Can't you withdraw the lawsuit? How much money do you want before you'll let us go? I listened quietly as he shouted. And only when he ran out of words did I respond slowly. 200,000. The line went completely silent. I let out a short, bitter laugh, cold, sarcastic, and painfully ironic. See, Li Hao, even now, you still think my dignity, my kindness, and everything I suffered aren't worth that much. Then I'll see you in court. I hung up decisively, cutting off the very last trace of hope they had left. Once in court, they simply couldn't afford a competent lawyer. The legal aid attorney they managed to find stood no chance against Tu, who had prepared every piece of evidence and every argument with airtight precision. He was refuted so thoroughly that he couldn't even open his mouth. Faced with overwhelming evidence, recordings, photographs, witness testimony, the judge delivered the verdict on the spot. Li Hao and his mother, True To Mai, were ordered to issue a public apology to me in the city newspaper and on the community bulletin board where I lived. For 3 consecutive days, to clarify the truth and restore my reputation. They were also required to compensate me for emotional distress, lost wages, and legal fees, totaling 20,000 yuan. 20,000. In the past, that might have been just a few months' salary for Li Hao. But now, for them, it was like a knife driven straight into an already bleeding wound. Later, I heard that to cover his father's increasingly astronomical medical bills and to pay the court-ordered compensation, they were forced to sell the family's only home. They moved from the city center to the outskirts, renting a cramped apartment just to get by. They paid a fitting price, bitter and irreversible, for their selfishness and ingratitude. A few days later, I saw the apology letter posted on the company bulletin board and in my residential community. It was handwritten by Li Hao himself, photocopied, and posted publicly. The handwriting was crooked and uneven, filled with remorse, humiliation, and pleading. As coworkers passed by the board, they read the letter and then looked at me with eyes full of understanding and support. Expressionless, I read the entire letter. Then I took out my phone, snapped a photo, and sent it to Tu with just 2 words, "Done." After that, right in front of several coworkers walking by, I reached up and tore the A4-sized apology letter off the bulletin board. I folded it in half, then in half again, and tossed it straight into the trash. They didn't deserve my forgiveness. What I needed was never a belated apology. What I needed was justice, and a clear ending. Now that justice had been served and the ending made clear, it was time to close the chapter. After everything settled down, I submitted my resignation. Manager Vong tried hard to keep me, even promising a promotion and a raise. But my decision was already made. This place held too many painful memories. Staying would only force me to relive the hurt and isolation I once endured. Because of the composure, decisiveness, and sharp logic I demonstrated throughout the incident, combined with my professional competence, I was soon recruited by a top company in the industry. Both the position and salary were a step above what I had before. My life finally returned to its proper track, and more than that, it moved steadily toward a better future. On moving day, while sorting through old belongings, I found my old phone SIM card. Without hesitation, I pulled it out, snapped it cleanly in 2, and threw it into the trash. That was the end of the past. I, Chu Nian, had a new beginning. 1 year later, in a new city, at a new company, my career was thriving. Thanks to successfully leading a major project, I received an exceptional evaluation and was promoted directly to department head. On a weekend getaway, Tu and I vacationed by the sea. Golden sunlight, white sand, the rhythmic hush of waves, and salty sea air brushing across my cheeks, everything felt peaceful and beautiful. My phone vibrated. A former coworker I hadn't spoken to in a long time sent me a WeChat message. Somewhat curious, sharing an update. Li Hao's father had passed away half a year earlier. I heard that after they could no longer afford imported medication and better treatment options, his final days were filled with intense pain. As for True To Mai, perhaps she couldn't withstand the shock of losing her husband, her son's downfall, and being forced to sell their home. Her mental state reportedly began to deteriorate. She spent her days sitting in their tiny rented room, muttering the same sentence over and over. If only we had given the 200,000 back then, if only we had. Li Hao could only find manual labor work, struggling to survive day by day, looking more than 10 years older than his actual age. At the end of the message, my former coworker wrote with heavy emotion, "This is karma." I looked out at the deep blue sea stretching to the horizon. Seagulls tracing graceful arcs along the line between sky and water. I replied calmly, "They made their own choices." I put my phone down. Just then, Tu walked over with 2 cocktails and handed one to me. She raised her glass with a bright smile. "Cheers to the battle goddess. From now on, no one will dare bully you again." I clinked glasses with her, the crisp sound ringing out. Tilting my head back, I drank it all down, the burn and the sweetness intertwined. Just like the year I had lived through. At last, I understood, kindness is precious. But kindness must carry a few sharp thorns. My blood is precious. And my kindness is even more so. That's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to China Story Tales, and stay tuned for more stories.